We usually think of reading as a pretty straightforward one-way street, right? An author writes something, and we, the readers, just receive it. But what if that's not the whole story? What if every single time you open a book, you're actually stepping into a two-way conversation, a kind of secret dialogue where the text is actively talking back to you, trying to shape you into the perfect reader for its story?
Okay, check out this amazing story about the 19th century mathematician P.L. Chebyshev. He's giving a lecture on the mathematics of tailoring, for fashion designers and tailors. And this is his opening line. You can just picture it, right? This room full of artisans, and this guy starts talking about spherical humans. Well, they were so baffled that almost all of them just got up and walked out, leaving only a handful of mathematicians behind.
So was that a huge mistake on his part? A total failure to read the room? Absolutely not. This is a perfect example of a text actively choosing its audience. Chebyshev's words weren't a bug, they were a feature. They were a filter designed to weed out everyone who couldn't speak its very specific language and find the only people who could. The text literally created its own ideal readership right there in the lecture hall.
And that gets us to this really crucial concept, the ideal reader. Every text you have ever read, from a dense novel to a simple user manual, has a kind of ghost in the machine. It's a built-in picture of you, its perfect audience, and it's constantly working on you, trying to tune you to its specific frequency, to shape you into the exact reader it needs you to be to understand its message.
So how does a text do that? How does it tune us into its frequency? Well, it does it by playing with two very different languages that all of us speak, often without even realizing it. There's the language we use in the public world and the language we use in our private one.
Let's break this down. Public speech, the kind you use with strangers, has to explain everything. It can't assume you know the backstory. But intimate speech, the way you talk to your close friends, it's the complete opposite. It's loaded with shortcuts, inside jokes, and half-finished sentences because it's built on a massive foundation of shared memories. You can just say, "the spot," and your friend knows exactly which coffee shop you mean. In fact, its value comes not just from what it says, but from all the people it excludes.
And we see this exact same thing in how we present ourselves. Think of an official portrait. It's your LinkedIn profile picture, all professional and buttoned up. It's a public statement to strangers. But an intimate portrait? That's like a goofy, candid photo you send only to your partner. It's not about status. It's about revealing something true and personal. One is a broadcast to the world. The other is a whispered secret. So here's the bottom line. By just looking at a text's structure, how much it explains versus how much it leaves unsaid, we can figure out what kind of memory it assumes we have. We can literally see if it's treating us like a total stranger or if it's inviting us in to be a friend. Okay, and this is where it gets really, really cool. Authors can turn this whole public-private dynamic into a fascinating game. By cleverly blurring that line, they can create this incredible sense of intimacy with you, the reader, basically turning a complete stranger into a trusted friend. So take this line from the legendary Russian poet Alexander Pushkin. He's talking about some prophetic poet, and then he just casually drops these three names, Tamira, Daphne, and Loletta. Now imagine you're an average reader back in 1827. You'd be totally lost. Who on earth are these people? Well, here's the secret. That line was a direct shout-out to an unpublished poem by his very close friend Delvig. This wasn't something you could just go look up in a library. There was no Google, no Wikipedia. The only people on the planet who could possibly get that reference were the handful of people in Pushkin's inner circle. Everyone else was completely and intentionally left out of the loop. And this is the absolute genius of what he did. By putting a private joke out there for a huge public audience, Pushkin creates this powerful effect. As a reader, you might not know what the secret is, but you can feel that it's there. And the very act of being shown the secret, even if you don't understand it, makes you feel like you've been let in on it. The text itself tricks you into feeling like you're Pushkin's close, intimate friend. So now that we've seen how a text talks to us, let's flip the script. Let's look at how a text even comes to exist in the first place. How does an author get from some vague, messy idea to a finished story? I'll tell you this much. It is not the neat, linear process you might think it is. The great novelist Dostoevsky had a brilliant way of thinking about this. He said the creative act really has two parts. First, there's the poet's work. That's the lightning strike, the mysterious spark of an idea. He compared it to finding a raw diamond.
Then comes the artist's work, and that's the hard grind of taking that raw diamond and carefully cutting, polishing, and setting it into a beautiful final structure.
So where does that initial poet's work even begin? Well, for someone like Dostoevsky, it often started not with a theme, but with a symbol. In his notebooks, you'll find a single word like this, slap, written over and over and over. Now for him, this wasn't just a word. It was a potent, explosive symbol for absolute, soul-crushing humiliation. It was the seed from which an entire novel could grow.
So you see, the creative process doesn't start with a nice, orderly plot. It kicks off with these really dense, multidimensional symbols. A word like slap, or another one he used, spider, contained an entire universe of potential stories. The characters could change, the setting could change, but that core symbolic feeling, that was the anchor.
I think a great way to picture the author's mind at this stage is to imagine a giant, chaotic ball of wool. All the ideas, all the characters, the plot threads, the symbols, they all exist at the exact same time, tangled up together in this big, multidimensional space. It's not a line, it's a cloud of pure potential. And the final text, the book you hold in your hands, that is the one single thread that the author has painstakingly and often painfully pulled out of that chaotic mess. That artist's work he talked about is the act of transforming that multidimensional cloud into a linear, sequential story that we can follow from page 1 to the end.
So, if the author's massive job is to turn that chaos into a single, straight line, what's our job as the reader? Well, this brings us full circle, right back to our role in this dialogue, and it explains why a text is never, ever truly finished, even after it's been published. This is a really fascinating paradox. The author and the reader are looking at the exact same text, but they see it in completely opposite ways. To the author, who lived inside that chaos, the final text is just one of many possible outcomes. They remember all the choices they made, all the words that could have been. But to us, the readers, the text feels like destiny. It feels like a solid, cast-iron structure where every single word is locked perfectly into its one and only possible place. Check out this famous Latin palindrome. It means roughly, in Rome, you will find love by chance. Now, if you read it backwards, it says the exact same thing. The words are the same, but is the journey the same? Not at all. And that's a perfect metaphor for what's happening between an author and a reader. And here, to me, is the most exciting part of this whole thing. The author's journey is from a messy, multi-dimensional idea down to a single linear text. Our journey as readers is the exact reverse. We take that single thread of text and, using our own memories, our own experiences, our own codes, we reconstruct it back into a rich, multi-dimensional world of meaning inside our own heads. This isn't just passive consumption, it is a deeply creative act that actually generates brand new information. Which leaves us with one last, pretty provocative question. If the goal isn't perfect, one-to-one transmission of a message, if misunderstanding and reinterpretation are actually baked into the whole system, then what is communication really for? The semiotician Yuri Lotman, whose ideas really powered this whole explainer, put it perfectly. Think about it. An absolutely understandable partner would be useless because they'd just be a copy of you. They couldn't teach you anything new. The real value of a text, and maybe of any conversation, isn't in perfect, flawless comprehension. It's in the dialogue, the friction, and the beautiful, unpredictable new meanings that are born when two different minds meet across the page.